Morning and thank you everyone. Today we are going to discuss about meeting C-suite priorities. How can CPOs, head of procurement, head of supply chain directors meet C-suite priorities? What is so important right now, especially during this pandemic period? A little about who we are. We focus on sourcing, cost and profitability is our focus, financing solutions, helping you on cash and their liquidity, logistic solutions to help you fulfill your production and revenue objectives, and capability, which is performance, which I believe is the most important part of what we do. So what are some of the supply chain metrics that matter in 2020? I know 2020 is almost going to the fourth quarter, but more importantly now in the focus for C-suites and the CPOs is controlling spending, EBITDA, cash, risk, relationships, localization, trying as much as possible to do things locally. Now, Gartner came up with about 3 ways where chief supply chain officers can build relationship with C-suites. This is important just for you to learn on how you are able to catch the eye of the board or the ExCom. So one is demonstrate a pioneer or a fast follower spirit, analyze and digest the overall strategy of the organization, always link the supply chain or the procurement strategy to that of the organization. Do not do things that are not aligned with the organization. If you are able to demonstrate that your strategy and what you are doing is aligned with the organization strategies, this will gain you trust. Generate trust by discussing this with the C-suite on the business challenges. For example, during this time, I believe that supply chain managers have developed strategies and proposals and policies which they have shared with their management and the board on the way forward in the supply chain, the way forward in the upstream and the downstream supply chain, in operations, in manufacturing, and you presented insights and solutions. The second part is shape the culture. Think big, define a vision. Take risk as you develop and socialize your vision. Start by implementing small steps. Start by getting more spend under control. Be a solution provider. Be the person, small people in the department. For example, the department secretaries are willing to come to knowing that they'll get a solution for their bosses. Display financial acumen. Spend time with the CFO to understand the financial objectives. Align every initiative in the supply chain with the financial objectives of the business. But also, having said that, remember businesses also have non-financial objectives. Some businesses are big on EHS, some businesses on SDGs, some on ESG, some on CSR. See how what you are doing is able to also impact their non-financial objectives with absolute success. Now, this is where we're looking at supply chain versus finance. I always say that in all the accounting statements, on the left side is supply chain, and on the right side is the finance. Are you able to demonstrate this? Are you able to pick the key important financial results and demonstrate how you are impacting them? If we look at this table, your delivery performance directly impacts revenues. I always say sales and marketing will tell you about the food, logistics will put the food on the table, supply chain and procurement will help you afford the food. So if you look at the impact of what you do on revenue, of cost of goods, and effectively on the profit. So whether you are a CEO of an expanding corporation or an owner of a fledgling enterprise, know that your results and your successes are inextricably linked to the performance of your supply chain. If you look at the profit and loss, you look again at the left side, or rather the balance sheet. You look at the left side, you see your supply chain response time, your inventory, your asset turns, impact your cash, your receivables, your fixed assets, your payables, and effectively your total liability. So you need to be able to see how many days you have outstanding payment, outstanding day sales, outstanding. You need to see the inventory days, the inventory value, the capex, the assets you're holding, what is necessary to be held, cash conversion cycles. For small businesses, this is a very important area, because if they are importing a product that will take 45 days on the sea and take another 60 days for them to be paid, and probably they paid in advance, they must be able to manage this conversion cycle properly. As supply chain heads, we must be able to demonstrate how we are impacting the business on these very important areas. Now, key areas where supply chain can take action to bring the SCM to the board agenda. This is by McKinsey and Kuna Logistics University. And there are a few 3 areas that I picked that supply chain managers and supply chain heads are able to work on to ensure that the supply chain agenda is at the board. Ensure that supply chain delivers exceptional value. Remember, there are different KPIs for different levels. For the board and for the EXCO and for the head of departments, they probably need 3 or 4 KPIs, probably cost, probably profitability, revenue, or governance. And if you ensure you are delivering those values exceptionally, impacting the bottom line, impacting the cash, and also impacting the non-financial areas where they are focused on, this will get you a seat at the table. Quantify the value you provided. If you look at the previous slides that I've shared, on the left is supply chain, on the right is financial metrics. Be able to quantify the left and how it is impacting the right, and pick the key things that matter to the business, especially right now where businesses are on survival mode and they require cash and as much lower cost and profitability, and also proper relationships with their supply chain. Excel at communicating. I would like to also add here, also excel at enhancing transactions, frictionless transactions, and communicate effectively. Share your wins. Be able to communicate on where the heart of this leadership is. Some of the SCM contribution to revenue growth opportunities: reducing of lead times, enable customization. Remember, the consumer's perception of a business is based on its supply chain performance. If a business does not perform as well as it's required, the consumer will assume, they will not know the supply chain, they will assume the business is poor and does not care much about them. Accelerate product launches, expand to new markets, enter new channels, enable premium pricing, provide outstanding service. So here is a small checklist, and this is for your action after this summit, for you to look at and how are you placed in the organization. There are various areas. Are you being discussed with the EXCOM or under the board? Are your topics available at that level? Is any of you reporting to the CFO or to the CEO directly? Where are you based? Are supply chain dashboards being considered by the CEO and the CFO and the board? It's very important because the supply chain dashboards impact the business performance. Remember, profit is revenue minus cost. All these revenue and costs are met in the supply chain. Are you able to demonstrate that? And are those KPIs addressed the way they should be addressed? Does the business unit or the CEO have some supply chain experience? Again, I believe this depends on the organization you are in. Does the supply chain have enough interaction with the CFO and the CXO and the board? So these are some of the areas you need to look at and tick yes or no or comment the situation to see where you are positioned. Finally, if you want to know your position in the business, ask yourself, are you currently in this situation leading the return to workplace projects, any of them? Are you currently leading recovery projects given the impact of the pandemic? Are you at the table? Or are they having a meeting discussing how to return people to work, how to change the supply chains, how to receive suppliers at site, how to do other projects? And then they come out of those meetings with a list of things you should buy. You should be leading this discussion because the insights in the supply chain, the solutions of how to return to work safely, on how to manage suppliers better, on how to get better prices and better quantity, on how to keep a supply chain base are with you and are not with anybody else. If you are not in this committee, please invade it and be part of it and make sure you're part of that leadership. You need to prepare the budget, discuss how to prepare the building, discuss how to prepare the workforce, procedure for sick and exposed personnel. For example, your discussion with the insurance companies, your discussion with ambulance companies, what you are going to provide in terms of PPE, supply chain safety assurance. How are you going to assure that your supply chain is going to be safe? How will you deliver? Will you offload exclusively? How will you receive? Who do you allow at site? Infuse confidence and togetherness. Collaborate with your suppliers, work together to ensure that you give a proper solution on recovery and return to work. Thank you very much. That's all.